I had mentioned that after I got out of the service, I traveled across the country for a good long time. When I finally reached the West Coast again, I was in San Francisco. So in San Francisco, I started to realize I needed to find a job because I'd been traveling for so long and pretty much blew through any cash I had. And I had a bunch of jobs, but when I was all over the country, but nothing serious. But anyway, so when I got to San Francisco, I started looking for a job, and I lucked in that one of the large hotels was looking for an investigator. And as it fell right into my background, I went, this sounds like something I could do. So I applied and I was hired. And so it was a good job. It was one of those where you just kind of investigate losses. Sometimes we'd set up sting operations for people who were like breaking into cars in the huge garage. So there was that. One of the things I really liked about the job was, and I'll be honest, is I wasn't a supervisor and I didn't have to supervise anybody. As a matter of fact, I was number 4 in the chain of command. There was the director, the assistant director, the fire life safety director, and then me. Now, it was never actually established whether or not the fire life safety director and I were third or fourth, but I always just kind of said, dude, you can be in charge. And so I saw myself as the number 4 person. Anyway, one day, it was early in the day, we got a radio call, or a call over the radio from our dispatch, saying that a chemical spill had actually happened in the subbasement. So what usually happens when that kind of thing happens, or anything happens, there's a door right outside our main office door. It goes directly straight down into the sub-basement. So you go down about two or three floors. That's about 4 floors. Anyway, so when this happened, our director and our fire life safety director just go shooting out the door and then straight down the stairs. The fire life safety director just run right by me because my office was right next to his, and he had to go through my office in order to get out. So, having heard what was on the radio, I moved my way out as well. But then I was thinking to myself, they said it was a chemical leak. And so when I got down to the next floor was where laundry gives out all of its stuff for working in housekeeping. And so when I got down to that next floor, I saw tons and tons of towels that were sitting there on the counter, because people would just grab towels, and they'd always have to have them ready for them to grab. So I grabbed a whole bunch of them myself, and continued on to the stairwell that went down a little bit further. On the next floor, there was a water faucet that I knew was there. So I drenched all of these towels into the water faucet and then continued on going down the stairs. Well, when I got down to the bottom floor, the director and the fire life safety director were basically just all out. They hit the chemical fumes and just they were gone. So I took a bunch of the towels, wrapped them around their head, and pushed them out towards the door. And then I had these towels around me, and I continued going until I could find where this particular situation happened. And I got down a little further, and it was right next to where the elevators were. And so I got there. One of the people was actually completely out. And so I put some towels around his head. And by that time, one of the engineers came down, and so he helped me carry the guy towards the elevators, and then we kind of threw him up on the elevator, and the engineer went up with him. And so we did that for a couple of people, because there's 3 or 4 people that were just completely out. And then I took one of the elevators up, and I got it to the ground floor, and right after that, one of the one of the housekeeping people came up the elevator and was like coughing, horribly from all the fumes that she'd inhaled when she went to the sub-basement. So we got her out as well, and then I turned off all of the elevators, told security what I was doing, and kept them all up onto the first floor. So I told security that's what I was doing, so have somebody come up to the garage level and just make sure nobody gets into one of those elevators. Because even though they were taken over, somebody could just walk in and go somewhere. So that was the start of our situation. So I went up to the security office, walked in there. It was in the garage area. And so I walked in to see what was actually going on, to see if they actually had, everything under control. And the supervisor for the security office, now I don't know if you've ever seen this kind of a situation before, but when you walk in, you start talking to somebody and they can't give you an answer. They can't tell you anything because they're just like overly consumed by what's going on and have never had something like this happen before, so they're pretty much in complete panic mode. So what I did is I had the dispatcher send the supervisor out onto a call, because there was a bunch of calls that were coming in because nobody was taking them, because everybody was responding to the chemical spill. And so I sent him out on that call, and then by this time the general manager of the hotel, the main engineer, who he and I got along really, really well, because I'd always run into him when I was like checking out different, sub-basement floors and stuff like that. Something I just kind of did on a routine habit. But he was there, and one of the other, I think there was two other engineers that were there, but they were kind of like in this round robin. So the engineer like called me over, realizing, because he'd done two and two and put them together, and realized I was probably the one that was in charge of security at this time. So I went over to where they were talking, and so the general manager was making a whole bunch of decisions, and so he would say, okay, we need this done, and it would be something that security would do. So have security do this. And then the head engineer would turn to me and say, okay, have security do this. Then I'd get on the radio and tell them, okay, security, we need you to do this. And so this happened like 3 or 4 times, until finally the general manager turns to me and he goes, who the hell are you? And that's the time where the general manager got introduced to me, the security investigator. Anyway, so I went out to where the ambulances were, because the ambulance had finally shown up, and our director was in one of them, and the the safety inspector was in the other one. Our assistant director wasn't on property at this particular time, so it was just those two that had been hit the hardest when they went down the stairs. So I went in, I talked to the ambulance driver and asked him, so what's going on? And they said, well, they definitely have to go to the hospital. So I got into the ambulance where the director was, and I told him what was going on. They were going to send him to the hospital. And so he asked me, he says, do you have all this under control? And I was like, yeah, I think I do, but I'll keep working on it, and I'll make sure that we do get it under control. And so he seemed that was suffice, and then the ambulance took off, and they went to the hospital. So for the rest of the day, I was like calling shots on, need to go here, you guys need to go here. I had the security staff basically acting as the entire response for this particular spill, until the engineers had actually fixed everything and it was safe for people to go down there again. And so an interesting thing I would share about this is it taught me an important lesson. First off, you can't escape responsibility if you want to. I had to take charge, and that was the only way it was going to work out. But the next day, the assistant director, who wasn't on property that entire day, I caught her in a conversation with the general manager telling him about all of the stuff that she had done on that day that the chemical spill had taken place. Basically, she just read my report of everything that I had done and basically kind of tried to claim that she had done all of these things. And I didn't say anything, but the general manager, after she was done, turned to me and says, "Why are you lying to me? He was the one that was here. You weren't here." And so she got really embarrassed, and for months she hated me after that. Anyway, that was one of the other lessons I learned, is sometimes people try to claim credit for things they didn't have anything to do with, which is a pretty sad story. The positive thing of that whole situation is all of the people lived. We didn't have any deaths. It was covered on the news, but it didn't get covered as there were deaths at this hotel. It was covered as there were some injuries at this hotel, and that was about it. I didn't talk to the news. I think our assistant director did, because she loved the limelight. Anyway, that's my story of the chemical spill that took place at this hotel. Thank you.